Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Primrose JB. I post content about academics, career and adulting. This video of course is about academics because I'm going to be sharing with you 5 key points I wish I knew before pursuing a career in academia. Now you might be wondering, why is this issue of publishing very important? So in the world of academia, if you want to be an acclaimed or internationally recognized academic, you have to have a proven track record of research articles, whether journal articles, book chapters, books, amongst other types of writing in academia that of course include your dissertations and thesis. So publishing is important if you want to pursue a career in academia and if you want to be a globally acclaimed thought leader, knowledge producer, and intellectual. I have here 5 key points. Number 1 is links/networks. Number 2, calls for papers. Number 3, the random approach. Number 4, think pieces. And number 5, fortune. Okay, so when it comes to number 1, what do I mean when I speak about links and networks? Personally, I've benefited from having formed strong research relationships with my supervisors from honors all the way to postdoctoral level. So for example, for my honors research project, it became part of my very first ever academic journal article because I took some research findings from there, developed it into a journal article, and co-authored that journal article with my then supervisor. Initially, I wasn't even aware that even though I got a distinction for this honors research project, it was actually good enough for an academic publication. So I benefited because my honors research supervisor had access to research funds, had access to a relevant, specific journal article that we could actually submit my work to. So they did that homework for me because at that time I was clueless on where I would actually have to submit, the formats to write in, and also what is relevant to put in a journal article based on what I wrote, for example, for a research project. So they also came in because they were very good at you know, writing and linking up theories and concepts with research findings. She was very helpful because we sat and had a lot of brainstorming sessions, bouncing ideas off each other, writing and rewriting, responding to reviewers' comments, and making sure that the article was going to be perfect for final publication. So it's a really good approach because you are being guided by someone who's been through these processes. And when you're not sure and when you're thinking, oh my goodness, the reviewers' comments are so harsh, they actually can give you assurance that you can actually, resubmit and the work will be accepted. Also benefited from working with my master's slash PhD, who then became postdoc supervisor. They had a main interest in the African Union, although that wasn't my focus area. What helped was that I was keen to work with them because they always got these calls for journal submissions, calls for book chapters. And because there was so much work to be done, he was like, okay, I've got this work that needs to be done. If you write with me, if you co-research with me, then you can be a co-author. So it really helped because it did improve my research track record and also put my name next to someone who has already have this like immense contributions in academia, who is globally, regionally, and locally acclaimed. What I didn't like about this approach is that to a large extent, even if you put in much of the work into such pieces, because you're not the person that had been approached by a publishing house or by a journal, you are less likely going to be the first author. And also, I think most senior academics just have this thing of wanting to be the first author because of their prestige or because they're a professor. What I also like about working through senior academics is that the chances of actually getting published are higher because you're being guided by someone who's been through thick and thin. You are also working with someone who's got access to research funds from an institution such as a university. You're also working with someone who's got access to publishing houses as well as journal editors. So you are almost guaranteed that your work, as long as it's excellent and it is within what is expected by the journal or the publisher, then you are good to go. Now, number 2 refers to calls for publication. This one is very important, particularly for sole authored papers. That is you writing on your own. You need to look out for journals in your academic discipline or in your field of study and check when they're calling out for publications. It is important because it is better than just randomly sending a paper when they're not saying that they're interested in a particular volume or edition. So I find calls for papers through websites of institutions that I follow. I usually also follow them on LinkedIn and Twitter because they actually do post these calls for papers. I also follow a lot of senior academics in the fields of study that I'm interested in because they usually share such information, whether via email, LinkedIn, as well as via their Twitter accounts if they're active on such sites. So it is also very important. Word of mouth is also another way of getting information on calls for papers. So make sure that you are chilling with academics or researchers or people that have access to calls for papers or people that have access to institutions or journals or publishing houses so that whenever there's a call for papers, they will actually let you know. Also, make sure that you're also asking them from time to time. I've benefited sometimes from speaking to academic admins and telling them that I actually want to be added to a mailing list so that whenever there's a call for papers, I won't miss it. Whenever there's a call for opportunities or even jobs in teaching and research, I can also get those via the mailing list. WhatsApp groups are also very popular nowadays, so do join those. So, for example, I'm on WhatsApp groups for postdocs, I'm on WhatsApp groups for researchers in politics. I am on groups that look at research in gender studies as well. So, I think that calls for papers are good because I find that usually when people call out for papers and they want to publish a volume, they're very serious about it. They make sure that when the works are submitted, they look at them, it goes to the editors or it gets reviewed in good time. So my experience also has come from, for example, doing a presentation at a workshop or a seminar or a conference, right? A presentation that is based on a paper. Oftentimes those people will say, okay, so based on this colloquium or conference we've had, we actually want to create a volume based on the papers presented here. So go back home, replenish your paper, add insights from the contributions from other panelists, and then that becomes part of a future publication. However, sometimes these special editions or publications might not be ones that are accredited or recognized by your institution, your country, or internationally. So you just have to make sure that you don't always lean towards calls for publications because sometimes they are relevant in terms of the discipline broadly, but they're not relevant in terms of accreditation or the credits that you can get from your institution for having written such work. Now, these are obviously unpredictable. What if you're only following accounts that don't post? What if people only post calls for papers like once or thrice or like twice a year? You never know. And also, writing under pressure is one of the cons of calls for publications because I've seen some people, it's July, the call for publications. They want you to submit your abstract today and they want you to have a 5,000, 6,000 word paper like in a few weeks or something. And you haven't done the research maybe that is relevant to that particular call for papers. So, that one is a very tricky one, but it is very helpful, particularly if you are responding to calls for papers that are in publications that are prestigious, internationally acclaimed, or in line with the Department of Higher Education's list of accredited journals or publishing houses. Now, let's move on to number 3, the random approach. Now, this involves a lot of solo searching, you doing it on your own or seeking assistance from others. What you need to do is compile a list of accredited journals in your field of study, approach them or look up their websites to see what their criteria for submission entails, submit a paper that is in line with those guidelines, and wait and hope on them to respond to you. Now, I've realized that personally for me, there's a low response rate with regards to this. And also, they receive a lot of random submissions from people because they put out their information, they're online, readily available in the format they accept and the topics they want. But it doesn't mean that they've got the capacity to publish everything that gets submitted to them. So, remember, also, I said in number 1, sometimes they lean more towards academics that they're used to, the prestigious ones, the professors, and often ignore early career researchers. So you need to tread carefully with this particular approach. Now, in addition to the low response rate, I also see that there's a lot of pressure when it comes to highly rated journals, particularly international ones. So more often than not, you're likely to get rejected for even petty reasons. Like I've been told before that, well, yeah, you wrote about migration and foreign policy. Because we are mostly a migration journal, we think you should try and maybe submit your paper to a politics or foreign policy journal. I don't actually think they read it. But anyway, I don't want to be emotional about it. So remember, like what I said is what's good about this approach is you're approaching based on you knowing which journal are actually accredited by your Department of Higher Education. Also, ask your supervisor to say, where am I better off submitting my works in terms of our field of study, so that the review process that you go through, you are getting reviewed by people that have years of experience in this particular field of study, and it will be beneficial to you even if your paper doesn't get published. All right. So number 4 is think pieces. Now, these require a lot of work, and it just means that you are going to get better with time. People write think pieces in the form of articles in the media, in terms of blog posts on their websites. So, for example, in politics or international relations, some people actually have political commentary blogs. Also, through the form of presentations, and your thesis, and of course, your dissertations are types of think pieces. Also, essays and papers that you write, for example, when you're in a writing group with people or presenting at a workshop or conference. How this helps is that you're always constantly developing your thinking muscles, your intellectual writing muscles, and you are going to be speaking to people that often, give feedback. People comment on articles, whether verbally or in writing. So that also helps you to develop your work. And I think that sometimes you can actually get spotted. I've had some think pieces that I wrote getting identified and leading to me being invited to actually submit a journal piece or a book chapter. So it works sometimes, but you don't know when it's going to work for you. And then also, they help you because you can always develop further ideas that you'd have addressed in a think piece or in a mini format of something that is written. Also, when it comes to your thesis or dissertations, these are key sources of information. Some people have written up to like 3 or 5 articles or a single book based solely from their thesis or dissertation. So don't sleep on your thesis or dissertation work, because it can actually lead to your academic muscle being strengthened and you becoming a globally acclaimed researcher because of the research outputs that have come out of your dissertation or thesis. Now we come to number 5. I like to be realistic. I put down number 5 as fortune because I know that in academia, some people are just lucky, right? Not lucky because they're not doing the work or putting in the effort, but it just means that some people are more fortunate than others, right? However, what I do know is actually that fortune favors the brave. You have to have been brave enough to get a PhD or a master's or to do a postdoctoral research fellowship. You have to have been brave enough to write up something and submit it, right? And to share it with the world, whether in writing or through speaking and presentations. So also, we should always remember that opportunity and preparation, when they meet, they can definitely lead to success. So, the bad feedback you got on reviewed papers or when you were presenting, the constructive feedback you got from the papers that you wrote or when you were presenting is also helpful. All these will lead to eventual success, I think, in the long run, particularly if you want to continue to write. So, it's very important. However, when I say luck, I was today thinking about how in academia, yes, they say that you need to present topics that represent novelty. So, novelty is something that is new, something that brings up a new perspective, usually maybe a new case study or looking at, trending phenomena. So, for example, if I submit today a paper on the gender impact of climate change, it's likely going to receive a warm welcome. And even if the review can be very rigorous and whatnot, because I'm presenting, for example, a feminist perspective on climate change, me focusing on the gendered impacts of climate change and giving a case study that is relevant and has not been researched or is under researched, I'm more likely to get approval in the long run on this particular topic, right? And then also, for example, people writing about women in science and technology, right? It's still a novel topic. So I'm not saying that you can do a short job on such an article and get approved, but it is more likely to be taken seriously because it's just in the building stages. And they acknowledge that because it's entry level, people will do better as they do future research. But they currently need articles in that field because they're trying to build knowledge in that particular area. Same applies, for example, if you were looking at COVID-19. when we were in the height of the pandemic around 2020, 2021, people were writing about the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19, the gendered impact of COVID-19, and a lot of articles in that area were receiving a lot of attention. People looking at the impact of COVID-19 on small businesses, for example. So as long as your topic is relevant and in line with trends, you're also more likely to get published. And I think this also speaks to, for example, I've been recently thinking about how I've seen that many people approach me because they want me to write about women in international relations, women in politics, feminist foreign policy. So, in as much as I'm interested in looking at gender and the politics of development, I have had to some extent had to endure this idea of, you know what, let me gain interest in this particular area, let me write more in this particular area, because once I submit this book chapter or this journal submission, I know that it is going to be published. More than me spending a lot of time looking at a paper that looks at, for example, elections in Zimbabwe or peacemaking in Southern Africa or the role of the African Union in promoting economic development on the continent, because those topics, although they can be trendy, are over researched. So I think it's very important to think about how, what are the factors that could get me fortune or luck in this particular area of study. So it requires a lot of research and you being clued up on what's trending nowadays in your field of study or in areas that you're interested in. So what I'm saying here is, in as much as you want to publish based on issues you're interested in, the issues you've been putting up as media articles, as blog posts, or issues you raise in your thesis, if it's not as trendy or on demand, that also might relate to you getting a long time to get responses. It can also lead you getting like a lot of harsh responses from like reviewers because they feel like they know this area and it's an over researched area and you're not bringing something new. So that is very important. I hope that you found all the 5 key points I presented today insightful. If you've got something more to add, feel free to use the comment section, or if you don't want to comment, you can always send me an email and we'll share further insights from that in future videos. Thank you very much for watching this video. Before I leave, I just want to let you know that I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of October 2023. So if you've not subscribed, please consider doing so. If you've already subscribed, thank you very much. Feel free, as always, to share my content with anyone that you think might be interested or might benefit from it. For now, it's goodbye from me.